Today I've had like a huge advance in lyric writing, like epiphany after epiphany, revelation after revelation. I wasn't getting like worried, but we're now halfway through the recording process and there was still four, five, maybe even 6 tracks that weren't, some of them didn't have even a theme, let alone any lyrics yet. And today, for some reason, everything's just been falling into place. So I'm happy, relieved, jubilant, jovial, ecstatic. The Spark is obviously instrumental that layers up hopefully very fresh sounding synths that imbue a sense of a new beginning, of relief about coming through a period of adversity. A sense of hope, I think, was the main aim with this track, to provide that immediate starting point for the rest of the album.
Previously on every one of our records, the introduction has always been a way for us to build a lot of tension and a lot of intensity, and for that reason, you know, when the first song kicked in, it was always like a really, to be honest, it was always a really, really heavy song. We always wanted to start off with a bang and kind of kick people in the face, but with this album, I think it's, you know, the Spark, it really sets out a different kind of emotion. I think the synths as well, the sounds of the synths are really laid out in the Spark, and you know, obviously you hear a lot more of those kind of sounds going through the record.
Honesty was probably the main, it was the very first sort of building block that the rest of the album blossomed out from. It was very important that I laid myself bare, like revealed every inch of one's soul, both the sort of very deep emotions but also the banal everyday kind of stuff. This was influenced mainly by a philosopher that I name drop in the song, called Jean-Jacques Rousseau. His book Confessions, it's kind of the first autobiography really, and in that period of self-restraint, it was a very brave thing to do, to talk about the inner workings of one's mind and to reveal sort of very honest, almost radically honest things about yourself. And that's a mindset I wanted to keep throughout the album. So seeing as this song is effectively all about rebirth, I wanted these first synths in the sights to be, well, to have a sort of pure, simple, childlike, almost immature quality to them, to get that sort of freshness.
Yeah, David had a massive collection of old vintage analog synthesizers, and I think being able to use them really helped to gain that kind of sound and that kind of emotion. I guess just by nature.
There was originally this like long drawn out intro that didn't quite make the final cut. A nice little guitar solo line in. It's sad to lose that, but
seems a better idea to cut straight to the good stuff. Oh, that's good stuff too. But
the meat and potatoes.
That's kind of the main job of a producer, I guess, to kind of look at the dinner plate and think, right, you know, what's just extra? Get rid of the green beans.
The frilly shit that you don't need on the outside.
Yeah, exactly.
But then what's the gravy to pull it all together? That guitar solo was definitely some green beans.
Yeah, that was a green bean solo.
Green beans!
Green beans are essential.
Where else are you going to get your vitamin K? And the Sights is all about a new beginning, a fresh new start, and all the raw emotions that come with that. So not just excitement, but also the fear. You know, whatever this new path is you're about to undertake, there's a whole spectrum of emotions that you may feel. And I think that was echoed throughout the album as well. It's quite important not to make a purely positive album, or, you know, an album that's in effect offers false positivity. It's positive for positivity's sake. I'm not really interested in that. I'm interested in first and foremost of being realistic. Likewise, I guess on the other side of things, I don't think like Shikari could never be a purely negative thing. Like, we couldn't be a doom metal band. So it's all about that realism and offering a kind of tangible scope of things. So sometimes after a long day of writing and recording, you get sort of cabin fever and you end up making really stupid shit.
There's only one way to get stoned. There's only one way to get stoned. There's only one way to get stoned.
I'm pretty sure there's more than one way to get stoned.
I wanna live outside of all of this.
So Live Outside is basically about escapism, really. It's mainly influenced by my experience of anxiety and insomnia, and I guess especially the incessant nature of anxiety. So for example, I can't sleep with the noise in this house. That's the house is my head. It's the inner workings. It's the relentless onslaught of worries and anxieties that just go round and round, the rumination basically.
The drums are a lot more just purely electronic, little sort of like, sound like gnat farts kind of going on here and there. But then when we went into the studio, David really wanted to record some live drums into it as well and blend the two. So I think he felt it gave the whole song a bit more kind of continuity and flow and a bit more body to the drum samples, instead of just a pure, almost postal service style electronic drum parts.
So the spark was heavily influenced by the post-punk era of music. What a lot of that essentially was quite upbeat, melodic music, but with stark, sober lyrical content. Live Outside is probably the best example of that. It's a very playful, melodic tune. And I wanted to really get across the vulnerability side of things as well. So we've got synths like this that are just quite... just an innocence to them. They're just so simple and quite frail almost. And that was important just to reflect the lyrical nature of the song in the actual synths that we choose, instead of opting for sort of big, heavy, you know, broad, wide synths. I think there was something quite endearing about gentler, frailer synths.
This neuron buzz is on another level. I'm on thin ice, I'm dancing with the devil. Can't sleep with the noise. I'm on thin ice, I'm dancing with the devil. Can't sleep with the noise in this house. But you can't beat the allure of this now. I can't sleep with the noise in this house. Why won't they pipe it down?
Obviously in Shikari we use a lot of electronic bass synths. That really just kind of for us provides the backbone in the bottom end, and by doing this it gives me a bit more freedom to add some extra parts which add a bit more melody, and quite often, you know, that needs to be a lot higher up the neck so that we're not muddying the waters in the bottom end.
It makes the whole thing more interesting as well, because you get these polyphonic, you know, melodies over the top of each other. And just makes the song more broader in its scope. So the song's about yearning to want to almost escape the confines of one's skull, for one's consciousness to transcend and leave behind the onslaught of negative thoughts.
So it's basically the beginning of 2017. It's early January. Just had my birthday, which was starkly contrasted not so long after by the inauguration of President Trump. So I'm actually quite thankful that we have this little bubble to immerse ourselves in and just completely absorb music and forget about the outside world for a few weeks. It's a welcome time to do that, I think.
Take My Country Back is all about how modern society has become extremely divided, and we all kind of rely on very narrow bands of information in terms of getting our news. We become slaves to ideology, really, and I think social media has exacerbated that. So it's a typical internet thing of, if you like this, then you'll like this. You only sort of see things that are in your blinkered vision, and then if you then come to try and have a conversation with someone who has perhaps a differing view from you, or is coming from a slightly different, philosophical background or something, conversation becomes very difficult. It gets heated very quickly because we've only seen things that we agree with, and that then just emboldens our views. So then we sort of come in very strident, and having an actual conversation, an understanding conversation where you begin to see where someone's coming from, becomes pretty much impossible. And we resort to debate, which in effect is a competition. It's trying to win something rather than trying to understand where someone's coming from, and then seeing how we can build onwards.
So for each album, we always finish off with getting loads of our big group of our friends down and doing gang vocals. Had a big crowd of us down in London, and this song in Take My Country Back was one of the more sort of rowdier songs to put the gang vocals in. It was kind of the gang shouts and gang chants, as opposed to more melodic stuff in the rest of the album.
Back, back, back! Forward, forward, forward! Back, back, back! Forward, forward, forward!
So this was the first draft of what was to become Take My Country Back. As you can hear, it was a much more just raw, straight up hardcore punk track. It doesn't really sound like any. It's a completely different riff in this first section. That often happens. Like, the songs will be much more raw and just straight up punk in their embryonic stages. So this was now the bridge. Look what we've done to ourselves. Still had that big epic chorus.
Yeah, it's amazing listening back to this, because I'd almost forgotten that the first section there, and it's amazing to see, just remember how much stuff changes from the demoing process to the final cut. You make one decision on a whim, and it takes you down a completely different path.
It was influenced pretty much by the year where we were writing, where we had Brexit and we had Donald Trump. So it was a very tumultuous period. It was just shock after shock. And there was a lot of anger and bitterness, and very sort of in-group, out-group, just fighting constantly. And online, it was not a nice place to be.
Back, back, I wanna take my country forward. I don't wanna take my country back. I wanna take my country forward.
Cool.
So it's about tribalism, but it's also about how the elite, or those in power, can then use that. And this is something that humans have done throughout the centuries. How they can pit us against each other. So if you give a problem a human face and say it's them, it's the other, it's the foreigner, being emotional creatures, we easily sort of get into that point of view, and we easily follow that point of view, rather than thinking, well, most things are a problem due to inequality. Inequality is a systematic problem, and that's a very convoluted and complicated way of thinking about things, and it's hard to have that argument when someone with perhaps a more conservative way of looking at things can go, no, it's him, it's them. People latch onto that a lot easier, and that's just the way we're built, I think, neurologically.
When Raoul was playing us a demo for Take My Country Back, it sounded like loads like, I want to take my country back. And we're like, oh man, like I don't know if that's going to be like the right message. So, like in the demo, like he really tried to articulate, I don't want to take my country for like our benefit. I don't want to take my country back.
So for a band that's kind of the main thing we've ever sung about, I think is unity, and community and communion. For a band that's been our central talking point, that then becomes a song of real frustration. I mean, it's probably one of the most angry songs on the album, and it's definitely a fun one to play live.
Now look what we've done to ourselves. We really got fucked at this time. Look what we've done to ourselves. Jedi! Get up and feel the rise inside. We're fed up with all the signs. Get up and feel the rise inside. Get up.
One of the other recurring subjects throughout Shikari's lifespan has been perseverance. Even from the first album, that was a really important sort of psychological mindset for the music. Airfield was mainly inspired by a Shakespeare quote in the play As You Like It, "Sweet are the uses of adversity." And that's something I can remember. It was a quote that I'd loved since sort of studying him at school, but I really sort of experienced that quote to its fullest a few years ago when I had sort of a very, very grim year. All sorts of stuff happened and my mental health just went crazy. And I perhaps didn't know it at the time, but then coming through it, the positives and the things that I learned, the strength that I gained, the experience that enabled me to grow as a person, that all became very apparent after sort of coming out the other side, if you like, of that period of hardship. And so that's basically what Airfield is about, of me sort of offering a shoulder and hopefully that a sort of a glimmer of hope for people that are going through perhaps one of the toughest years of their lives. So it's a song that I made as just as I was beginning to see the light and come out the other end of the tunnel when I was going through a particularly nasty period.
The sound of all the mechanics of that. I'm a bit sad that the pedal isn't more creaky.
So out of all the sounds on the album, the piano sound on Airfield was probably the one we spent most amount of time deliberating on and trying to find the exact right texture. I think growing up with being influenced by a lot of dance music, the piano sounds in dance music are often very, sort of the bare, MIDI, slick piano. And I think for a song like Airfield, it had to be the complete opposite from that. It had to be
a very natural, organic sound and embrace all the impurities or considered impurities of the instrument and have all the mistakes in it and the creaks of the mechanics. So we spent a while with the mic positioning and getting a sound that really hopefully replicated the mood of the track.
David just loves like random noises, just like loves like happy accidents, like mistakes, sort of things to feel more human and real and edgy and like not sort of perfect and polished. Just fuck it up a bit, don't play it like as straight as that.
Try and play it a bit shitter.
Yeah, and for Airfield he was adamant that I just make nice horrendous noises that I could for this end section. So I was making this noise going, how is this gonna sound good in a song? Like, but actually it's quite an integral part of the sound now.
How did you make the sound? Sounds like scratching the pick up and down the
scratching. Like I used an ebow a lot. Like if you hold an ebow over the pickup, it like feeds back loads. Just some. Makes a really nice chaotic crescendo.
And all elbows. Fuck, it's so cold. You're down on your luck. You're down, but that don't mean you're out. It don't mean you're out now.
I would prescribe 10 minutes break.
Yeah.
It sounds killer, but we want it to be, the best it could possibly be. I'm sure it will be. Yeah. I'm excited. There were 3 or 4 you did where I genuinely had proper fucking goosebumpy stuff. Really pleased.
Cool.
Towards the end of the full band section in the second half of Airfield, you hear a cacophony of drums, almost to the point where you can't actually discern the main beat because it's such a massive sound. And to get this effect in the studio, basically had to hit as many drums as I could within a short space of time for multiple takes. In the mixing stage, we panned one to the hard left, one to the middle, and then one to the hard right, and then had the whole mix building up slowly to a large crescendo right at the end to make it nuts and intense, where it suddenly cuts out, suddenly dies back down. That whole effect really makes for a really big impact.
This song goes out to anyone who's currently going through the worst year of their life.
So you're down on your luck. You're down. You're down on your luck. You're down, but that's only your house. It's only your house. It's only your house. It's only your house. You're down.
So even when times may seem the toughest, when the wind is against you, that can sometimes be an inspiration, or it can be a learning period that enables you to rise to a better form of yourself and learn more about yourself and the world around you, and grow from that.
So it was very clear from a very early point that Rabble Rouser was definitely going to make the album. I think obviously this track is possibly the one track on the record that really does focus more on like the dance aspect of what we do.
So Rabble Rouser is really a kind of job description of what we do, especially in the live scenario. It describes what an Enter Shikari show is like. It celebrates really and lists the best things about that situation, and then it also gives you the flip side of that, and it's also not just a positive track in that respect, it's also a bit of an attack on people that use music not to connect, but just use it as a, you know, within capitalism as a form of commerce instead of a form of communion. So it's a very frustrated track, calling out that mindset as well.
We felt it was really important to keep it very, very separated in terms of the sounds. In like the Minesweep recording sessions, I think we would have taken this song and we would have started layering things over the top of the drop and things like that. So we found it quite integral to really keep this very simple and yeah, almost pretty minimal, more minimal than I think we've ever gone before.
Yeah, that was the general philosophy, wasn't it? Really,
Yeah.
This album, to kind of try and keep things separated, which is like we have said it for like previous albums as well, but this
was even more so.
we always just seem to end up going, oh yeah, but if we just add this one thing.
Yeah.
The riff that comes in just before the drop, it's got quite a lot of harmonics in, so it's like, you know, you play a note and then hit the harmonic, then play a note and then hit a harmonic. Rao had recorded it on the demo and then went to record it in the studio, and me and Rao sat down and we spent about an hour literally trying to figure out how to play it. Like we found the notes and the harmonics, but it was just like, that is impossible. How the hell do you do? So we ended up in the end just going, you know what, let's just use a demo. I figured out that he'd actually tuned one of the strings like something weird, like 4 semitones up or something. So yeah, lucky I figured that out, because I was like dreading it, like coming up to the tour. I was dreading like, what am I gonna do for that bit? Like we don't know how to play it.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that was different about David Coston than anyone else we've worked with before. Like he was very keen he wasn't afraid to use parts of the demos in the actual, in the actual album. Whereas before we probably would have tried to re-record everything just to make sure it was absolutely clean and crystal. But David Coston was very keen on, not losing the energy that some of the demos had. And one of the ways we did that was by, using actual samples from the demos.
So Rabble Rouser has that sort of quintessential kind of UK garage house inspired organ bass, effectively. So I started off writing very sort of typical rave riffs, really.
It's without the house beat.
Yeah, had to switch it up, but then just opted for something a lot more evil,
sinister,
cheeky. There's like a sneakiness to it. The line "I torture rock stars with pliers" is influenced by my experience of first getting into music and being in a band and thinking almost perhaps hoping that the notion of a rock star was somewhat archaic by now, but then sort of seeing it still rearing its ugly head like in various different disguises. So, you know, we've done tours where it's you clearly see the careless objectifying of women, that sort of rock star mindset. You see people charging their fans in order for their fans to have the honour of meeting them. People just making soulless, vapid, like clearly recycled, just fucking boring music. Perhaps just trying to make a quick buck or something. I think music is one of the best ways to connect with people, to be honest, really, in a world that's all about fake news and everything. It's all these frustrations that I think that probably came to a head a few years ago, and that's when we started making this song. This also is a bit of a sister song to Warm Smiles Do Not Make You Welcome Here.
So here we are in Rabble Rouser, and a lot of tracks, obviously, Enter Shikari are known for blending their electronics and their live instrumentation in, and certainly with the drums, that's no different. Quite often we'll have drum samples over the live drums, we'll blend them in. Sometimes it'll work, like a rockier section might work better just with the live drums, but here in Rabble Rouser, it's a hell of a lot more of an electronic song, and in the first half, the first drop that you hear is actually purely electronic drums. Here we go. So that's all that's actually happening. There's no live drums in this section at all. But then when the live drums do come in a little bit further down the line, it's the first chorus that we've ever had. In fact, there's been absolutely no cymbals in the chorus. So that's kind of strange for me, having a chorus, especially in such a sort of a big, aggressive song, until it comes into this section, obviously, and you get the little... There's a lot of layering up. There's a lot of stuff that you do in the studio that you can never recreate live, but that's one of the great things about studios. You can just layer up as many stuff as you want.
Tea time.
Oh, that was it. Well,
Tea time.
Tea
time.
Shinrin Yoku is an ode to nature, really. I think in today's modern society it's often easy to get caught up with the mindset of thinking that nature is just a commodity, it's something to be exploited, it's a way of us to make things and to make money, and we often forget about its beauty, its healing power, and you know, and it's our heritage as well. As a species.
This next song is very apt because it's about trees and it's about fresh air and it's about nature and it's about not thinking of nature as simply a commodity to be used and abused. This song is called Shinrin Yoku. Make sure you breathe. Just concentrate on your breathing for the next 2 minutes.
Before we decided that we were definitely going to be working with David Coston, we went and spoke to a few different producers and played them a few of the demos, and this was one of the ones, anytime you played it, I said, I don't care what you think about the other stuff, but this one has to be on the album. As long as we've got this one on the album by the end of it, I'll be happy. Then I'm sure we said that about all of them actually. So
yeah, I think there was a point during the process where I was like, oh, this is the best track. This is the best track. Oh no, this is the best track.
Yeah.
Shinrin Yoku is a Japanese phrase. It's kind of, I went through a period of being very interested in phrases in different languages that are kind of untranslatable, or at least there's no direct translation. And Shinrin Yoku is kind of one of them. I guess the closest the people use is forest bathing. So it's when you go into nature and you immerse yourself in it, you absorb its majesty. And you know, there's so many studies that have been done in the last few decades that show how it can relieve stress. You know, it brings your cortisol levels down and stuff. And yeah, we often overlook that, I think.
So Shinrin Yoku actually came from a live remix that Raoul created on the Electribe years and years ago that we used to play at gigs. The synth section that comes in just before the big breakdown.
Yeah, it was like an outro to Johnny Sniper, wasn't it?
And then these kind of jungle drums come in. Not wildly too dissimilar from where it ended up in 2017. It's been transposed to a different key. But it still has that... That was in the original. And instead of jungle drums, we have excitable Rob Rolfe on the live drums. So that was this song's humble beginnings. When we released The Spark, there were actually some people with a good ear enough to have actually remembered us playing that and mentioned it. And I thought, good spot, you guys. You're good. Yeah, you're good.
Second fill felt really good though.
It did feel quite nice, didn't it?
For the breakdown section, there's like a plucky thing that it's got a metallic plucky sound that is actually this like hand piano thing. It's like this, I've forgotten what there's a technical name for it. Or
it's not a marimba, but it kind of sounds like a marimba.
But it came down to me to try and tune this thing and play it, which was an absolute nightmare because you have to like get a little hammer, or I think I used like the end of a screwdriver or something, and just tap these bits of metal and go dung 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 dung, like trying to tune it against my guitar.
The finger piano.
Yeah, that's my spent so long tuning that thing, like, but I got there eventually. Yeah, and it
sounded great.
Raoul was like, "Oh yeah, we should play that in live shows," and I was like, "You're mental. You can tune it then. You tune it."
Ready? You're an inanimate fucking object. For some songs where it's better just to keep a simple, good, steady beat, and other songs where a good part to go a little bit more expressive and a little bit more artistic with, and Shinrin Yoku was definitely one of those parts. I had spent quite a long time writing and learning the, I suppose you could call it drum solo in Shinrin Yoku, and it was a lot of fun. And it took me a long time to rehearse it. I was doing it at about a quarter of its original BPM, and then just slowly built it up till I got to a point where I could play it all at once, all at the right up to speed.
When we recorded in Angelic, there's some really cool equipment there, and one of them was an old rotary cabinet, and yeah, we used that to record this guitar part. Sort of creates a really cool natural chorus.
Maurice's quiet time. Clearing the air.
I remember when we were doing that, we were just like, do you know what, should we just go back and just put all the guitars through this cabinet, because it just sounded amazing. That was another one as well.
There was a beautiful instrument that they had in the studio called a dulcitone. And it's kind of like a piano, but on the inside of the piano, like how a piano works with hammers hitting the strings. Instead of hitting strings, it hit like metal keys, kind of like a glockenspiel or something.
So Shinrin has this beautiful array of different sounds to create this kind of ethereal ode to nature soundscape. These are basically, do you remember we did it with Tim where we went off into the woods for a day with a load of mics and just recorded everything from scrunching leaves to throwing pebbles in the water.
Sticks along a wall.
Yeah, just all these different sounds, and that's they're all layered up within the intro of Shinrin. Just give it that really nice organic texture.
Yeah. I think we should take the release just this stem with the dulcitone.
What was that thing? That little. What's that? That's so cool.
Pretty much all of the recording process, Undercover Agents was, I guess, the favourite front runner to be the first track on the record. I think the main reason was it was the first lyric, "Park your car and come on up to my house, we'll start a revolution." It just seemed like such a bold statement to open the record with. It was just so open to interpretation.
There's something about that dichotomy between an everyday thing as parking a car and going up to see someone, and then it escalating very quickly to start planning a revolution.
Yeah.
Undercover Agents is all about perception management, which is rife wherever you look. So on a sort of big scale, it's about how governments and media try and control our perception of things. So obviously through the media we have bias and rhetoric. These are obviously very old hacks. It's not a new occurrence. These are things that have been prevalent throughout societies for a long time, but they're perhaps a lot more brazen now. You sort of see the forms of control or attempted control, your perception of things in very sort of in broad daylight. I think there's not so much. It's not such a hidden and mysterious art. It's a very bold thing now that you can't seem to avoid. it's also about perception management on a more personal level. So especially with the advent of social media, how we portray just fragments of ourselves, and usually the very best fragments. So we try and display the pinnacle of our lives. And obviously when you're scrolling through social media, as we all do, and see just the best bits of everyone's lives, it's often very easy to think that everyone else is a lot happier than you and has better lives than you, and that's one of the reasons why depression is so prevalent throughout today's society.
And we've got some good memories of recording this song in the studio. One, because it's just such a feel-good song, but the wolf howls that you can hear. Some of us, you could say, were better at wolf howling than others, and so we all got round together and we started trying to howl together. And David very quickly realised that there were some bad eggs, so we had to do the.
He just turned into Simon Cowell.
Yeah,
he was ruthless.
He literally singled us out, didn't he? He's like, right, you do it. You do it now. It's like, okay. No. So me and Rory got cut from the recording process for being.
It sounded too like Scooby-Doo.
It was like, 1, 2, 3.
You're out. No, I'm in. Sin bin.
Focus, mate. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Tonight I'm howling with the wolves. Wolves. The wolves.
So Undercover Agents is about yearning for perhaps a simpler life or a more honest life, and wanting to get away from the social pressures of trying to control everything all the time.
Park your car and come on up to my house. I want to see your body. I don't want the glass, I want to see the truth. I want to see your body. Hey! Troop.
Quite sort of late on in the recording process for Undercover Agents, we sort of felt like there should be something at the end. I remember David saying that, like, he thinks there should be some sort of guitar solo or something there. The next day I went in and he was like, I found something. I was like, what do you mean you found something? It's like, I just like unmuted a few tracks and there was like this part. Which has like sort of become like an integral part of like the ending of the song, and for the longest time we just like even after the record was already out, we still like no one could remember who recorded it. Like it might have been like I didn't remember recording it. Like it wasn't in the demo. Like Rao didn't record it. Like
you've got no idea.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And it's in the song. Someone's recorded it. We don't know who. Well, it wasn't me. Don't think it was Rob.
Why do you laugh?
All we had to go by was...
No one's taking claim.
Yeah, all we had to go by was the title of the track, which was Angel Flaps. And
who would name a track?
Yeah,
Angel Flaps.
But then when I was getting ready for the UK tour, like I was going through all my tones on my Kemper, my digital amp basically, and I found one called Angel Flaps.
Yeah.
I was like, that must be it.
That must have been you then.
Yeah.
Maybe after a couple of whiskies late at night.
Yeah, it must have just been a late night.
Yeah, the guitar solos, considering, I mean, we've had, is Antwerpen the only other guitar solo? I think in the whole of our catalogue. And yeah, so that they have to be right when they come. And this one, every time we play it live, it feels so liberating. Like, it's one of my favourite points that I look forward to all the time. It's like such a feel-good section of the song and of the whole set in general.
I can always see you on stage, just absolutely living in the moment when that bit comes in.
And the move was so promising.
Shall I touch it? Oh. I don't know. Will it bite me or something?
Whoa!
Oh, you know. Alright, we're pals now. He's dirty as well. You could put some mud in his hair. You need to sort your barnet out, mate.
I wanted to have a track on this album that was just a bit of an anomaly, kind of its own thing, and The Revolt of the Atoms tries to echo at least the style lyrically of Mothership. So it's basically a piece of science fiction about a pretty strange concept. I was reading a lot of Kafka at the time, and I was doing a lot of just writing of poetry and prose when I was making the album, and one of the kind of ideas or concepts I became like obsessed with like imagining if each individual atom in the, well, if we just concentrate on Earth, each individual atom on Earth became sentient and had its own mind and its own thoughts, and if all the atoms then had a sort of hive mind and were able to come to the decision that they realised that humanity was fucking up the Earth, so they then decide to basically disperse. And if you can imagine what that would look like if all atoms just decided to, you know, to come together and revolt, basically, we'd just kind of slowly disintegrate and turn to, I don't know whether it would be pain. I presume it'd be painful.
It's the revolt of the atoms from London.
From Manchester.
From London town to ancient Athens, illuminate all traces of human life. They plan to wipe us out.
You're saying illuminate.
I am, aren't I?
It's eliminate.
Eliminate.
Start again.
There's some very cool synthy things that need to be heard more. Like on the, I don't know if you just heard on the middle 8 thing, I just boosted this. I'd never even heard this. But it fits so nicely with the guitar. It's like two feral children running together.
It's the revolt of the atoms from London town to ancient Athens. Eliminate all traces of human life. They plan to wipe us out.
So the Revolt of the Atoms riff on this gorgeous synth is actually one of the first riffs of one of the first ever Shikari songs.
Stems back a long way.
It was never recorded, but we were just scouring YouTube, and we found this show from Pioneer in St Albans back in 2005. obviously in Revolt of the Atoms it's been swung.
There was an interesting use of a bass in this song as well, because halfway through, like where it kind of makes the switch, or around the point in the song where it makes the switch into the outro riff, it's like a rattly kind of noise. It sounds like we're thinking about using like a vibra slap or something like that. But
Monkey, our drum tech, says it sounds like someone's slapping his spinal cord with a screwdriver.
Yeah,
he hates it. He can't stand that noise.
It's sort of the sound of getting shivers down your spine. Kind of, I think was the idea, and it's basically a little Evertune Allen key that we sort of dangled up against one of Chris's bass strings and played it and mic'd up the bass strings.
So we got one part or one note in this song that we're recording which particularly needs, which we really let go on. You really want to let it ring, but we decided we'd add some metal to it. Here's the metal, Rory's Evertune Allen key by the looks of it, and you just purely add the metal to the string. But you got to hold on to it.
Sick. You like that?
Yeah.
This is so awesome. All my guitar dreams are coming true.
Sends tingles down your coccyx. It's just fun to make sort of sounds that like other people don't make. I mean, I doubt anyone's ever put an Evertune Allen key up to a bass string before.
Maybe we haven't heard it,
but maybe it'll become a thing now because it is, it's cool.
So it's a bit of a dark subject, but like I found that a really playful subject to be able to then make a track, and I think like Revolt obviously has much more of a playful tone to it. It's got that sort of slightly swung, almost swagger to it.
This bit changed slightly, but then we've got a sort of mid-late. I think it was originally the chorus actually.
Yeah.
This bit.
What are you saying?
I'd really like to live under sea.
Under the sea.
different themes start coming in and different parts start coming in, and there's strong parallels to the end of the song, the Beatles song I Am the Walrus, where they just kind of seem to be going off on a tangent and stomping off around the fields like in a weird craze or whatever. And there's even the line "Oompa oompa, stick it up your jumper" in the end of Revolt of the Atoms, which is there also is quietly in the back of the I Am the Walrus. There's a little
homage.
Homage, yeah.
David Costin sent a video to like a group WhatsApp of like Rao recording that like in the most ridiculous manner, and I just thought it was a joke. I was like, oh, it's really funny, but it's just a joke. Like I didn't think he'd actually done that at the end of one of our songs. But that's the thing, like like 13 years down the line, I'm still surprised by some of the stuff Rao comes up with.
So as the song progresses and the story, the narrative progresses, everything is basically disintegrating, everything's falling apart, so there's lots of layered noises trying to replicate what atoms disintegrating would sound like. Put it something like that.
It's pretty good representation.
So I know to Lost Jigsaw Pieces is about two kind of thought processes. One, a kind of crippling fear of change and how debilitating that can be. And also about just dealing with loss, I think, really. So the track is split up into two parts. The first is all about coming out of a long-term relationship, which I've had experience of twice, and just how disorientating the shock of it, and having to sort of reconfigure your life and sort of in a way sort of get to know yourself again. And then the second half of it is all about losing my last grandparent a few years ago. And it's just that outer layer of support, that sort of scaffolding, if you like, is taken away, and you just feel just suddenly just a bit vulnerable at the same time of dealing with the loss and going through the grief associated with that. So it's quite a painful track. I'm not sure if we'll ever play it live. We'll see. Like, I mean, you can tell listening back to it, like the last few verses are particularly tough to get out.
I remember when Ralph first sent us the demo of this track, and I was like listening to it, and he got to that end section where he starts talking about he's lost more pieces of his jigsaw and just all that like really emotional section. And yeah, I was like unloading the dishwasher and listening to it on my headphones, and like I've started to tear up. It was just like, I was like, this is, because it was heartbreaking, because he was literally like, you could tell like when he was singing it on the demo that he was like crying, like basically. So it was I texted and I was just like, mate, that was that was pretty special. So yeah, I was always really excited about this track.
This section still gets me and my wife in tears every time we listen to it. In fact, my wife Ivory can't listen to it anymore. She tells me to turn it off as soon as she hears it. She'll just be in floods of tears.
So I think it was particularly important with this album to include those kind of darker and tougher themes, to have them integrated into the album as a whole and not shy away from approaching them. That was mainly influenced by W.B. Yeats. He said that only an aching heart conceives a changeless work of art, and that really stuck to me, because I think before we've written stuff that's often just so relentlessly, not even political, but just like all about the bigger subject, the wider subjects, like philosophically speaking, and I've often shied away from like intensely personal things. So I wanted to kind of bridge that gap, if you like, and just like approach those themes of this album.
Yeah, we got some string players into the studio to do some parts. And yeah, there's just something about having live strings. When you do program strings on the computer, they're always so perfect. There's never any sort of human like flaw or anything. But like when you get like actual string players in, like, you know, you can feel the way they move between the notes and like the way they like change the tension on the bow or whatever they do.
Inflection on each stroke kind of thing, as opposed to just one perfect drawn out.
And because strings is such an emotional sound anyway, and they like invoke emotions anyway. Like when you add that extra element of like human error, I guess, in a good way, it just like makes it so much more heartbreaking. So
I've always been blown away by Raoul's imagery and his Raoul as a lyricist. The kind of things that he conjures up, like saying in my chest there's a thundering pain, feels like God's in there having a migraine, like.
yeah, so good. There's so many good lyrics in this track.
I could never like come up with anything anywhere near like anything like that. It's like, how does he think of these things?
Yeah.
But you know exactly how he feels.
Like whenever we record a guitar at the studio, we recorded like a dry signal of just the guitar, so that we could then, what's called reamping it, where you like just play it back into an amplifier and then record that, so you can basically just like, you only have to play it once, then you can just play it, you choose the amp sound later. And we got this sound and it was okay on the, but when I'd left the studio I was happy with it. But then Costin was like texting me saying, I think we should like, do you mind if I try a different amp with this sound, and he tried an amp called I think it was like a Selma or something. It had this like vibrato setting on, and it's just like so. It's just so like, I don't know. It's just perfect for the mood of the song. Also, I just noticed, and I haven't actually noticed till just now, that there's actually another appearance of angel flaps.
Angel flaps, back again.
It's just coming out of nowhere. You can hear it. Like, I think it's obviously got like a lot of reverb on, but obviously, so that's the same tone as the same sound as at the end of Undercover Agents solo.
So these are the drums in the first movement of Ode to Lost Jigsaw Pieces, and there's this is the tripleted swung section, and then in a second you'll hear it goes into the 4/4 there, more straighter beat, which was it's not done that much. I can't think of, like, especially in modern music, I can't think of any others that sort of go between the triplets into the 4/4 like that. There's obviously a lot of triplets used in 4/4 music, but never like the full band doing a straight cut, and it really it just changes the whole pace of the song. And
what we wanted to achieve by that change from almost lazy swung feel going into that straight driven 4/4 feel was to convey a change in mindset, really, from despair and melancholy into determination and having authority over one's life.
And this is the that marching snare I was talking about. Hi. You wanted to hear some? So here we go. I've never done a marching drum technique before, so I actually, before going into the studio, had a drum teacher come around to my house and teach me the right techniques to use, and ended up taking his brother's marching snare into the studio and recording it over and over and over again and layering it all up so it sounded like a big sort of military marching band style drum part. So that was also a lot of fun. So it sounds like there's 50 of me marching along playing this rummy diddle.
50 rock rolls marching along rummy diddle.
In our minds, we could see this being, the final actual track on the record, and I think that it went along with the themes that we've done in previous records, with Fanfare for a Conscious Man and Constellations, where the last track on the record is a very reflective kind of moment, and we always like that because it really just gives you time to kind of take everything in, and to leave people with with their minds open and ready to think on a big scale, really.
Ready to take on the world.
Yeah.
Well, the very last line is "we all cope somehow."
Yeah.
Which is leaving in a, I don't know if it's kind of positive.
I think it's something that everyone can relate to.
Yeah.
And we felt that was really, really powerful.
I think the whole track, the best metaphor I can think of is if you're just a kid on a bike with your stabilizers learning to ride, and then someone whips the stabilizers away, and just that's how you feel. You just feel suddenly just very, very vulnerable in those situations where sort of major figures in your life suddenly aren't there anymore.
After we'd done like quite a lot of the demoing and the album was sort of starting to kind of, it was starting to emerge, like what kind of album it was going to be and like how it was going to all be structured and everything. I remember because Rao had written the Spark intro track already, and then he was playing around with it and he made a slight alternate version, and he was like, oh, I was thinking about like having like bookending it with this, and we can call it ... The Embers. And we were all like, yes! It was a big like glorious moment. Like,
it's sort of bittersweet, really. It's as I said with the Spark. For me, those chords are just so intensely emotional, and it sort of encapsulates that, I think, bittersweet air that is throughout the album.
It's amazing how it's actually the exact same chords as the Spark, but it's got such a different feel to it. If you listen to the Spark feels like such an awakening, a new start, like this lively kind of fresh spring morning type thing, whereas the Embers is a lot more nostalgic. Maybe if you just listen to them side by side you wouldn't get that, but having listened through to the album as a whole, by the time that you get to the Embers, it feels like you've been through quite a journey.
I absolutely love all the little scuttling noises and stuff. It always makes me think of like a ferret like scuttling over like some autumn leaves or something. The texture of it is so like nice on the ears, something about it. It reminds me of like John Hopkins or something like that, like using these organic sounds.
Its confidence is now sky high, and I think we're really starting to experiment with a new sound so much that if it doesn't feel just like another album, it now feels like a bit of a new era, which is obviously quite a big statement, but almost feels like a departure. You know, the way that I've been writing has changed, the vibe of the songs, the confidence in the lyrics, in speaking about things approaching topics I've never approached before. Instrumentation, everything seems to be being pushed, and I like that.
He knows that producer likes a little bit of croak in the morning.
Got great legs.
Yeah.
This song is about kicking anxiety in the shins and spitting in Destiny's face.
I'm gonna